Hello Internet Explorers. Today we start another epic adventure.
But we're not heading north this time into the cold. We're going south to find some sunshine.
Yeah. Welcome to the long free ride. For those of you that travelled with us last time, you may remember that we went to the world's most northerly supercharger. This time we're going to head south to Europe's most southerly supercharger. And when I say Europe, I mean mainland Europe. But today we're off to the Eurotunnel to cross to France and then head to Reims.
I think it's pronounced Rennes, darling.
But it's spelt Reims.
Yes. I accept that, but I don't think that's what the French call it.
Yeah, but if you're just going to drop letters out of the name of something, we might as well call Paris Pris.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the Welsh do that quite a lot.
Well, no, they don't drop letters. They just have two L's that don't sound like two L's.
Well,
that's completely
better,
different.
Is it?
Well, anyway, we're off to the Channel Tunnel.
Our plan for today is to charge the car at the Eurotunnel. There is a Tesla supercharger just outside the terminal. Then once we're in France, we're charging en route at a place called Aire de Villiers. Probably pronouncing that horribly wrong. We'll put the name on the screen. Then before we arrive in Reims, we're going to do a sort of top-up third charge for the day. Really just so that we're ready to depart when we're leaving the city.
Fortunately, the M23, M25 and M20 were kind to us that morning, and within about an hour and a half we were pulling up at the check-in gates for the Channel Tunnel. As in our previous visits over the last couple of years, they seem to have major works going on, and part of the whole complex seems cordoned off constantly. I assume it's expansion for future further traffic, but who knows? Anyway, we found a charger, plugged in, and went inside to get ourselves a cup of coffee.
So we actually missed our allocated train slot. Nothing to do with us, it just took forever to get through customs. So we were in the terminal with our coffee, we left exactly when the first call sign came up, but we then of course have to go through UK customs and then the French customs. The French side seemed to be lacking staff. The time came and went that we should have been on the train and we were still queuing. So they put us on the next one, no drama, nobody even said anything, no problems, just drove on board and 35 minutes we emerged into the French sunshine.
Our plans for this trip are to use toll roads as little as possible, but this day was an exception. We've got a lot of miles to cover, and obviously motorways are really the only way of doing that. I had debated buying the tag you can have in your car that allows you to drive straight through the toll, but I didn't get round to it. As I ground the wheels of the Tesla along the booth side trying to get Michelle as close to the machine as I could, I wondered if that had been a good choice. Our charging stop at Aire de Villiers was without incident, and we were soon back on the road to Reims. If we'd been at home, we'd have plugged in overnight ready to continue our trip, but on the road we need to top up at a supercharger to be ready for the next leg. So we grabbed some charge at the Tesla Reims supercharger before finding our accommodation.
So if you're coming to Reims, do stop by the Notre Dame Cathedral. It's fairly close to the station. Notre Dame, of course, meaning Our Lady, and it was dedicated to the Virgin Mary. For over 1,000 years, the kings of France were actually crowned in this particular cathedral. It's a Roman Catholic cathedral, and it's known for its stained glass windows with Gothic carved portals. It's been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1991, but it actually was built in the 5th century by Bishop Nasias, so apologies for pronouncing that horribly wrong. The construction of the current cathedral began in the 13th century. It had to be replaced because the earlier church was destroyed by fire in 1210. Now, the English defeated the Charles VI army at the Battle of Agincourt, and most of northern France fell to the English for a period of 14 years. So this place was actually under English rule up until, that is, 1429, when it was recaptured by Joan of Arc. You've probably heard about her, and it was a turning point in the 100 Years' War. So she has a statue both inside and outside the cathedral, which is relatively unknown. The last king to be crowned in this cathedral is Charles X in 1825.
Following our cultural visit to the cathedral, we headed back to the main street and found ourselves a small Italian restaurant to grab some lunch in. And from there, we headed off to Michelle's favourite activity for the day, which was a champagne tour. We had booked a tour of the G.H.Martel champagne house, which was within the city and had the original quarried caves underneath.
The chalk caves are actually up to 22 metres deep underground, and they were dug between the 4th and 15th century. It's quite incredible to think you're still in the centre of town and underneath you is probably a chalk champagne cave. So our tour of this champagne house didn't actually go to the vineyards. They are on the hills around the area, and the grapes are then transported, or historically were transported, into the caves and produced the wine in those cellars. Since the 19th century, when the whole process was sort of industrialised, this champagne house hasn't been producing wine in the chalk caves. That's now just for demonstration purposes and for people like me to go and have a look. This champagne house did have a really cute little shop on site, as you would expect, and we did purchase. So we did have something to take home and sample for ourselves. We actually chose a vintage one, so the year is on the bottle. It's never a vintage champagne if you can't see the year on the bottle. That's one of the lessons we learnt. So after tasting 3 different champagnes, we decided a walk was in order, and we chose to go and see Port de Mars in the centre of Reims.
The route from the champagne house to the Roman Port de Mars was a bit of a march and took us past the back of Notre Dame Cathedral and through a number of scenic squares. However, it was becoming apparent that our packing for Spain had not taken into account that it still might be only 5 degrees in northern France, and we were both pretty cold. We hoped to be able to find a nice cafe where we could sit inside and warm up, but all we managed was a cake shop with tables in the street. After our route march, it turned out that the impressive 3-arch Roman gate was under renovation, and 2 of the 3 ports were covered. I decided to get the drone out and get some footage of the city, but somehow managed to only record the takeoff and landing and miss everything else out in between. Hey-ho. Our route back to the accommodation took us along one of Reims' major thoroughfares, and we were able to pop into a chain restaurant for something to eat. It wasn't that special, but I'd have to say the beer I chose was very nice. Fed and watered, we continued the trudge back to the accommodation, arriving with aching feet and chilled bones.
Ensure you don't miss the next episode by liking and subscribing.
Just like our 2023 Norway trip, we'll be keeping a track of the tour stats. Hopefully these will give you an idea of the distances covered and the cost incurred in driving our electric car. In this episode, we covered 274 miles, which equates to 442 kilometres.
To cover that distance, we added 118 kilowatt hours of electricity to the battery over 3 charging stops. In total, we were plugged in for 1 hour and 17 minutes.
Because our Tesla is an early model, we do not get charged to use Tesla superchargers, but we will also let you know how much it would be if we didn't get that perk. For this episode, the charge from Tesla would have been £41.87. No other expenses were incurred with the car.
Now let's add that to the grand total for the trip so far. We hope the long free ride is demonstrating that you can do long road trips in an electric vehicle. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel to help us bring this message to a wider audience.
Next time on the long free ride, John has a nice pint in a rather dodgy looking bar, and Michelle saves a rather massive cake from collapse.